Welcome everyone to another Wine Animal YouTube video here. I am honoured as always to be joined by someone within the industry. A winemaker is always the ones that you want to get to. They're the ones that make the juice inside the glass that we love to drink. Now, I'm very fortunate to have somebody from the other side of the country. Well, actually, for the further southernmost vineyard, southernmost region in Australia, is it? Really? On the west coast, it is?
Oh, definitely in the west coast, but, you know, we've also got Tasmania to think about.
Man, we always forget about Tasmania for some reason. But this is Rob Mann. So you'll see from Swinney Wines here, but I mean, there's a long history there of winemaking and family stuff. So welcome. Thank you for being here with me. Just some humble tradie from the Yarra Valley. So please introduce yourself to everybody.
Yeah, so my name's Rob Mann. I've come from a long history of winemaking in Australia, and I'm currently the winemaker at Swinney Vineyard in the mighty Frankland River, part of the Great Southern in Western Australia.
So how far are you from Perth, and then how far are you from Margaret River? Just for context, on the video we'll do a little overlay here of where we are. So where are you?
So we're what's considered the middle of nowhere. We are about 4 hours drive southeast of Perth, about 2.5 hours from Margaret River, about an hour and a half to Albany.
It's strange, because isn't Margaret River like 3.5 hours from Perth? But that's like due south, is it?
Yeah,
and then you guys sort of...
It's a trapezoidal complex.
It's a long drive. I don't know if anyone's ever done it, flying into Perth, and I've done it a couple of times now, and then driving straight to Margaret River, that is a long journey from the East Coast. Like, that is a long trip.
Yeah, well, if you think Margaret River's tough, then Frankland River's even.
I haven't been there yet. I'll be completely honest. I haven't been there yet.
Oh, we listen to lots of podcasts. That's what we do when we're driving.
Yeah, I guess that's about the only thing you can do. I would have to listen to what is it at the moment? K-pop for the kids, I think it is. That's what's all the rage at the moment. Whatever the kids want to listen to, because podcasts about wine, Daddy, are boring.
Yeah, very dull.
But so you said you had a long history of winemaking. So how long are we talking? Like, how far back does that go?
So my own family goes back to the 1840s in South Australia.
Wow.
My family left Barossa Valley in the early 1900s to move to Western Australia to make wine at the Horton Winery, where they made wine from 1910 to 1972. My grandfather and great-grandfather, and then various members of my family are winemakers, restaurateurs, and my dad was, he owned a little vineyard that we planted together in the Swan Valley. His claim to fame was as a professional cricketer, scored a century against India as a night watchman to win the test match in 1977-78.
Oh, these are going to be the best overlays on the video when we have like the cricketing stuff. It's going to be so good.
Yes. So, yeah, he was a leg spin bowler, came in as a night watchman, saved the test.
And scored a ton.
On his home ground at the Wacker.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
A spin bowler on the Wacker as well. I mean...
I know, how tough's that, huh?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So so go back to 1800. So they were with Barossa, moved obviously then to Margaret River and started over with the Horton Winery.
I moved to the Swan Valley.
Swan Valley, sorry, yep.
Just outside of Perth.
Yep, okay, so closer to Perth.
That's the traditional wine growing region of Western Australia, been growing grapes and making wine for 200 years, basically. So yeah, at that point in time, there was no wine made outside of the Swan Valley. There was no, Margaret River didn't exist as a wine region. Mm-hmm. It existed as basically a dairy and mostly dairy. The Great Southern was really remote at that point in time, if you're thinking 100 years ago.
Yeah. God, that would have been a long trek, wouldn't it?
But my grandfather used to play a lot of cricket, and they would travel down to these areas to play cricket. And he remembers going to Mount Barker when he was young and looking at the trees and the landscape and, you know, getting out of bed and it's cold and he's thinking, man, this would be an awesome place to grow grapes. So he actually encouraged in the 50s Professor Olmo to come out from California, not just to recommend and look at regions for wine, but other projects that they had in the Swan Valley. And he took him down to, you know, the Great Southern and particularly Mount Barker, and Olmo said as he left, you know, what a great region. This has huge potential for growing grapes. The whole Great Southern, Frankland River, Mount Barker regions. Didn't include Margaret River, And it was only just shortly after that John Gladstone sort of recommended that Margaret River also had great potential for producing, classic Cabernet styles, because that aligned to the similar climatic conditions. So that was in the 50s, and from the 60s and 70s onwards is really when the first vineyards were established in Frankland River, Mount Barker, Margaret River. So outside of the Swan Valley, WA wine is only really 50 years old.
Yeah, okay. So it's still relatively young in terms of global wine, but in Australian wine, like for someone like me, Margaret River is it's like a staple of Australian wine. To someone newer into wine, it doesn't have that esteemed history of the Barossa, the McLaren Vale, and that, but it does to us. We see so much of it, and the quality of it is just so high across the board in WA. And I mean, JJ, he pounds numbers and stats and percentages down your throat, and he's always into me. We make 1.1% of the production of Cabernet, or 2.3% of the Chardonnay, and we win all the trophies, and WA this, and it's true. Like, the quality is just across the board from WA is top shelf.
So do the listeners know who JJ is?
I mean, the listeners do know who JJ is, and we actually, we've done one. I've done a couple of videos with JJ. We've released one, and so far that's been my most popular video, and he's just, I mean, for WA wine, let alone for Australian wine, he's just, to me, he's my mentor, my biggest supporter. He's also my biggest critic. He can be quite
Well, just by means
harsh.
of disclosure, he's married to my cousin.
Yes, which he told me about that when I told him that I was doing this event with you, and he was very, very chuffed. He's always telling me, you need any help with WA wines, and I will get them across to help you. But Swinney wine, so I actually met Matt in Cottesloe at Ilito, at the Italian restaurant.
Was he in his bike shorts?
He'd been for a run, I'm pretty sure. I don't think he'd been for a ride, but a run. I was having breakfast after a rather large night, and he was like, I follow you. I love what you're doing. Love to have a chat about Swinney. And that's sort of what started. I'd heard of Swinney, but I hadn't. On the East Coast, I think we're a little bit sheltered from a lot of WA stuff. We get the main wineries, but we're really sheltered from a lot. But what is it about Swinney? Like,
I don't know.
What is
to quote JFK, we choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because it's easy, but because it's hard.
Yep.
So the Swinney project is not an easy project. It's quite an aspirational project. The Swinney family have been farming in Frankland since 1922, and it was a wheat and sheep farm. Come the sort of mid-80s, sheep prices are really depressed, wool prices are depressed. They've got 25,000 merino on the property. That's their primary source of income. So I think they sat down as a family and did a business plan and said, cool, we can't be solely reliant on sheep as our source of income. So they came up with a plan. They diversified. They sublet the farm out to a farmer to run the farm. They created some tree plantations for a pulp mill in Japan to be able to provide some future income. And they planted a vineyard in the mid-1990s. So just to try and diversify their assets. So it's quite a big property in Frankland. And probably for the last 30 years, in combination with the vineyard they originally planted and acquiring some of the neighbours' vineyards, it's culminated in wanting to produce their own branded wine to really celebrate the very best of what their vineyard can produce, because much of the business is not just selling wine. So to give the listeners an idea, we use 2% of the area of the vineyard for Swinney. 98% of the fruit grown is grown and sold as fruit to other wineries. Mm-hmm. So there's some, I think at last count, about 38 different customers, right from big national producers right through to little mums and dads making small lots of little cool hipster wines. So there's a real diversity. And in fact, we did a sort of a celebration in the vineyard recently, and I think we gathered something like 35 producers who all made wine from the Swinney. They all bought wines that came from the Swinney vineyard. There was over 100 wines. Yeah. And we sat down and tasted them all in this sort of...
I got photos of that tasting, actually.
So it's pretty amazing. There aren't too many vineyards in Australia that
provide that many different producers, right? You think for every 100 tonnes, only 2 tonne of it is to make Swinney wines, and the rest is, made by other people. Like, that's, it's something that I think is, a lot of people will struggle to grasp their head around, that you sell off that much fruit. We're
super proud of the grapes we grow, and the best way to articulate to someone the value in them, as in terms of another winery, is to say, cool, here's the wine we made, this is what we're selling it for. This is what it tastes like. You can do that as well. We can grow this fruit for you, and you can create a wine in this sort of aspirational price point or style, or so it's the best way to articulate your vision as a grape grower is through having a wine that you produce from those grapes yourself.
It's just, again, it's like every time I talk to somebody in winemaking or in that owns a winery, it's always, there's so much input in the vineyard, and it seems like so much energy now, it's more so than previously, goes into the vineyard, and that's probably a real big testament to that. The fact that, you sell to so many different people when you could be making wines, like the Farvey range behind us, which have, a higher price tag, yet you still sell the fruit off because the quality is just so high across the board.
And we're also conscious that Frankland River is not particularly well known outside of WA. Swinney is a relatively young brand. Not many people have heard of us. So it's really important to be able to spread the word to essentially premiumise what we're offering, because we are in a really remote part of the world. It's expensive to farm grapes in Frankland. We can't just produce a commercial range of wines or grapes. We've got to produce something quite special to get noticed. And the Swinney range is Riesling and Rhone Reds. On the vineyard, we've got 25 different varieties. We could be making 25 different wines, but we've chosen to just really focus on just a small range of wines that we think are not only exciting now, but the next generation that is farming in Frankland River, they're wines that they'll still be making and still be excited about. So
we literally have a GSM. Like we literally have the GSM. We have Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvèdre. Mourvèdre, is that how you pronounce it? I mean, I'm not French, so I mean my
we say Mourvèdre or Mourvèdre.
People say Syrah, Shiraz, like everyone has that.
And Aussies say Mataro. Mataro is the same as Mourvèdre. We like to think we're quite sophisticated in Franklin. We use the French pronunciation.
Well, I mean, I think when you're dealing in the high, especially in the higher end and the higher price points, like the French tone of it, I think if you called that Mataro, I don't think it would have the same, the Farvey Mataro. It doesn't sound like Farvey Mourvèdre.
No, it doesn't, does it? But
the consumer thinks like that. They really do.
For example, Mourvèdre is not that well known as a grape variety, and I would say 90% of Australia's Mourvèdre is grown in the Barossa Valley. This wine represents like a cooler climate, more marginal for the variety, but it's right on the cusps of a variety's ability to ripen properly, where you get the greatest wines in the world. And so, Pinot grown in Burgundy, Nebbiolo grown in Barolo, they're not getting it right every year. It's 4 out of 5, but they're right on the cusp, and that's where you get the best expression of the variety's potential. So that's where things like Grenache and Mourvèdre really excel, grown as bush vines in Frankland River. We think that's also important when you think about, the variability of future climate, perhaps a drier, warmer, more extreme.
For the listeners, the Grenache, I know this bush vine grown. So explain that for them in like an easy term.
So before they invented wire, everything was grown either on a stake or as a self-supporting vine, like a bush vine or goblet train. So much like you might have a rose bush, it's goblet pruned. So it's old-fashioned farming.
They look gnarly.
They do look gnarly. There's still large tracts of bush vines grown really in vineyards that are planted prior to proper mechanisation. So in the Barossa, lots of vineyards older than, say, 60 years are often bush vines, right through Spain, the south of Europe, right around the Mediterranean, lots of bush vines. What it does to the variety is that the variety grown that way is that typically Grenache and Mourvèdre are slightly bigger berries, bigger bunches. They need space and air around them to be able to not be all clumped together. So grown on a goblet is grown essentially in 3 dimensions. All the bunches are separated from each other. You have this lovely dappled light throughout the day, no sort of hot spots of light. In contrast, a modern trellis is in, wires, everything's grown in 2 dimensions. So for varieties that have quite small bunches and small berries, like your Chardonnays and Pinots and Cabernets, that can work. But if you have big bunches, that's like a big sausage of fruit all compressed together, and the outside of the bunches get, overly exposed, overripe, and then within the same bunch, the inside will be green. So what we want is uniformity, and that's what a bush vine allows us to achieve.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's what we're here for. This is what the listeners are here for. So we're talking bush vines, we're talking about trellising, we're talking about two-dimensional, which is a lot of people, I think, don't think about that. Like, I think about canopy management, and they talk about canopy management and making sure that the grapes get the right sunlight at the right time. But when you're talking about an individual vine on its own, it has a 360-degree sense of climate. So that's interesting. This is what I love. This is why I love this so much.
Well, we take it even further. Where we're not farming as bush vines, so our Riesling and our Syrah are grown on a modern vertical trellis. We actually incorporate a technique I learnt in California when I worked in Napa Valley, whereas we actually run shade cloth down the afternoon side of the whole vineyard.
Okay.
If you can imagine, as the sun goes from the morning to the afternoon, the morning sunlight's quite mild. Over middle of the day, the sun's overhead, so no problem. You've got the canopy protecting the fruit. But if the warmest part of the day is at 2:30 and the sun's coming in on an angle, it can actually essentially roast, heat damage the grapes that are overexposed on that afternoon side of that canopy that's in that two-dimensional canopy. So running shade cloth, we use what we say cuts out about 30% of the direct sunlight, and that allows that fruit to stay fresh, vibrant, cooler in the fruit zone, and really help retain that, in the case of Riesling, those beautiful florals, that lovely clarity of fruit. In the case of Syrah, that lovely spice, the freshness, and the quality of tannin that we want in Syrah. So two quite different farming, bush vine to sort of, a vertical shoot position trellis, but we're also being proactive and innovative about how to get the best out of those systems.
So there's two ranges. So there's the Swinney range, and then there's the Favies. So we're here tonight, we're doing an event based around these wines. So same vineyards?
Yes.
Same grapes?
Yes.
What's the difference then between the Swinney Mourvèdre and the Favi Mourvèdre behind me?
Yeah, so
in essence.
In simple terms, in context, Swinney's retail for $45, $50 for the reds, Favi quite a bit more, $150. Both of them are made in small quantities from, like I said, a very small selection of the vineyard, and that selection is done purely on soil type. And in the case of Swinney, it is, in the case of Mourvèdre and Grenache, it's actually the same block grown for Favi and Swinney. The Favi section is a very specific soil type within that block.
Okay.
Farmed as a unique vineyard within that section. In the case of these wines, Favi is a much higher percentage of gravel, shallower soil profile. The vines may be 20% smaller, bunches are looser, smaller berries. It ripens 7 to 10 days earlier. In the case of Favi, we're using a little more whole bunch, a little more. But other than that, the farming's quite consistent. The winemaking is very similar. It's
like a sub-region within a region, isn't it? Like within a vineyard. It's like a Burgundy-esque model, right? Where a vineyard can be broken down into completely different.
It is. It's traditionally when vineyards are planted in Australia, you plant a grid, a rectangle, and that could be over 1, 2, 3, 4 different soil types. It could be quite a bit of variability within it. So we've done a lot of sort of mapping of the soil to identify that, but you can also just walk down the row and you see where the flavours change. This is riper here. Oh, this is more intense. Wonder why that is, and you kind of look at the dirt and you'll see it. Oh, it's changed.
I think that's a really, like that for me too. I remember the first time walking through a vineyard road tasting Syrah grapes. I remember thinking to myself, well, they're all just going to taste the same. Like from the top of the hill, this is in the Yarra in Seville, from the top of the hill down to the bottom of the hill, say it's 80 metres or something of elevation change. The grapes at the top compared to the grapes at the bottom could not have tasted any different. They're the same grape, they're grown at the same time, they get the same treatment, the same, spray, the same water, yet they were completely polarizing differently. And I think a lot of people watching probably early on in their thing would be like, you guys are mad. Like, you can say grape from that one to that, but one bunch to the next bunch on the next vine can be completely different.
That's right, yeah.
Simply because of where the roots end up. So that's I love this. I love this learning. But we've got Mourvedre, Grenache and Syrah. Now, if you had to pick one to drink yourself, which one are you picking?
Well, I think the crowd favourite is probably Syrah because that's what people are most used to.
Yeah.
Grenache for us has been somewhat of a revelation for a region outside of, say, the classic sort of McLaren Vale Barossa to be producing sort of a style of Grenache that's so compelling. It's quite unique, and so that's turned a lot of heads. It's also really highlighted the variety's potential for Frankland River. I think part of it is also that we grow it as bush vines, but those things combined make something really unique. And then I'd say for the real sort of the passionate wine lover inside me, it's Mourvedre grown next door to the Grenache, but it ripens 7 to 10 days later. So it's quite a late ripening variety, and you just get this beautiful spice and freshness and
it's almost like a combination of the two, right? Like it's almost like it has the best parts of both the Grenache and the Syrah.
It is, and we used to make a SMG blend, which was a co-fermented field blend, which I love the Mourvedre so much it became an MSG blend, and we had a few gigs.
just like click when you're like MSG. I'm like,
No, I'm like everything tastes better with MSG.
Yeah.
Like, that's the way I was looking.
Yum yum. Don't they call it yum yum?
Yeah. How good's this going to taste?
Yeah, exactly.
Full of MSG, and then the MSG evolved to a straight M.
Okay.
Because we wanted to really celebrate Mourvedre, and in fact, we have 3 Mourvedres in our range. We've got the Rosé, which is 90% Mourvedre, Swinney Mourvedre, and Favi Mourvedre.
I'm just going to thank you, and then we're going to move on. I think we're done, and then we're going to have a beer.
Yeah.
But yes, so we've talked all about. We know that Mourvedre is the wine maker's favourite, or the one that the true wine lover's favourite. We've talked about the ranges, the Swinney. You will start to see a lot more of these from me. You'll start to see a lot more of them in retailers, in trade over here. Rob's actually here in Melbourne and going to Sydney to show these wines. The 23s are the new release, right? Being released at the moment.
The 24 Swinneys
24s,
and the 23 Favis.
23 Favis. So we're looking at them all tonight. So notes and everything will be up on my website very soon. But a massive thanks to Rob for being here with me and impromptu interview here when we're about to host dinner. But that's what we do, right? I think it's more fun. It's not as staged. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, my pleasure.
And I'll get over to Frankland River sometime in the next 7-8 months, all right? Before the end of next year. I'll give you my word on that. So thank you all for watching. I'll be giving away a full flight of the Favis, one of each, to somebody watching this video who likes, comments, subscribes. You know the drill. We like to share the love. So thanks for watching, and the Wine Animal is out.